Hey YouTubers, it's Charlie. So Zack Snyder and David S. Goyer just got hired to write the Man of Steel sequel and fast track it for a 2014 release. So I thought I'd talk about some of the Easter eggs and teasers in the movie that will inform the sequel as well as the third movie. That's right, there's a Man of Steel trilogy coming. Get excited. So initially, Zack Snyder said that he left Lex Luthor out of this first movie just to make it more of an alien encounter story. It's about Superman versus the people of the Earth. He said that he really wanted to include him in the sequel, though, so I think that he'll become a main cast member and possibly the main villain. So the other big news is that this is going to be a trilogy in the vein of The Dark Knight. Christopher Nolan was a big producer on this first Man of Steel film. He'll be a producer on the next one, but he won't have quite as big a role. And what does that mean? That means that we're not going to see a lot of the crazier Superman stories or villains. We probably won't see other superheroes in the films, either the sequel or the third film. No Supergirl, no Flash, no Green Lantern, no Batman, and no Kryptonite. So that also means no Metallo. So just to talk a little bit about the dramatic arc of Superman over this trilogy and how it's going to inform some of the stories that they choose for the sequels. If you look at Superman, he's basically like a Christ analogy, and they really go into that in this film in a really heavy way. I mean, it's fairly obvious. I mean, the actual Jesus Christ story in the Bible is a little bit more subtle. So think about it. In this first film, we see Jesus learn about his powers, come to terms with that, and then step up to a challenge to become Jesus Christ, basically. Go from being Jesus to becoming Jesus Christ. So you have, Clark Kent learning about being an alien, learning about his powers, then he becomes Superman towards the final act of the film. So what's going to happen in the second film? Well, what happened to Jesus Christ? Well, he performed great works. And then in the final act of his life, he died and then was resurrected. That means that Superman is going to face a much bigger challenge, a much more global challenge, I think. I don't know if it'll be Lex Luthor or another villain that they'll bring, but he's obviously going to come close to death, much closer to death than he's ever been before. This is why I think they're going to include a Death of Superman story, probably in the third film, but let me know what you think. Do you think they're going to try and do the Death of Superman during this trilogy? Obviously, it would fit with the Christ analogy. There would have to be some sort of resurrection, death, and return of Superman. That could be a part of it. The character that they used in the original comics to accomplish this death and rebirth arc was a little outlandish, so I don't know that they're going to go straight comic book to movie. They're probably going to change a lot of things, but I'm pretty sure that there's going to be some sort of Death of Superman tie-in. So David S. Goyer, the writer of the film, actually said some interesting things about the Superman character. He said that there might be some powers that Superman has that we did not get to see in this first movie. If you remember, Russell Crowe tells Henry Cavill, "We don't know what the limits of your powers are. You have to continually test yourself." That means whatever the challenges are going to be in these next two movies, he's going to have to develop these new powers to deal with them. Let me know what you think these new powers are going to be. Is it going to be something ridiculous, or is it going to be something that we may have seen in the comics but they haven't used in a while? And think about this idea too. If Superman is just facing physical challenges, he does really well. He does very poorly against magic, but obviously they're not going to use that just because that's a little too fantastical. But how would Superman deal with a computer virus? I don't think super hacking is one of his super abilities that he'll be developing. Now let's talk about my review of the movie. A lot of people have been coming down hard just for Zack Snyder overcorrecting a lot of the previous problems with the franchise in that there was no action. Honestly, I think it was a little bit silly when it got to the third act and it turned into video game levels of carnage. In fact, Superman was actually causing a lot of the damage himself, so it was a little funny, but overall, I really enjoyed the action scenes. Just imagine Superman rebuilding all those things he destroyed at super speed all by himself right after the events of the movie. Hold on, Lois. I gotta go fix something real quick. And then he just shoots back and everything's just fixed. He basically destroyed the entire city almost. They're just flying through buildings all over the place. So honestly, I was more concerned with how I connected with the character emotionally, and I definitely think that a lot of his beats really hit with me. There were a few moments, especially in some of his flashbacks, that I didn't like quite as much. But honestly, I really enjoyed the way they told the story. The only scene I really didn't like was the tornado scene, and that just felt a little silly. I mean, honestly, why wouldn't you just let Clark go get the dog? I loved Russell Crowe and the way he played Jor-El, and I loved the way Michael Shannon chewed through scenery. I thought it was totally appropriate, given that this is a comic book movie, and given that Michael Shannon is famous for playing crazy people. I would have liked to see a little bit more scenes from the villains, like learning about how they got out of the Phantom Zone, out of that black hole, how they re-engineered their hyperdrive. But really, I think a lot of those scenes probably just got cut out, and we'll see them on the Blu-ray. I'll be doing a review of that as soon as it comes, but it won't be a little bit till later this year, so stay tuned. So overall, I give the movie an A minus just because I thought it did such a good job of distancing itself from the other Superman films. Remember, we're living in a post Dark Knight universe, so a lot of the way people tell stories now can be attributed to Christopher Nolan. And it really shows they're keeping Christopher Nolan on these films, even though his role is being diminished over time. They're really trying to rush this out too. This is one of their flagship franchises next to Batman, so they protect it as much as possible. So in the meantime, I'm doing some really cool videos. Be sure to subscribe to get them all. On Thursday, I'll have a preview for the upcoming Lucasfilm animated movie. It could be a Star Wars movie, could be something else. You'll have to watch and find out. On Friday, I'm doing a season 6 preview for Breaking Bad with some spoilers. And on Monday, I'll be doing a magic episode for Game of Thrones season 4. That's right, there's a lot of magical aspects on the show, so I'm just going to deal with some of the cooler ones. In the meantime, you can get more Marvel spoilers by clicking here, and you can check out my preview for The Desolation of Smog by clicking here. Thanks for watching. High fives for Superman.